سننه بسند صحيح عن أبي بكرة رضي الله عنه قال. Tonight's hadith is from the collection of Abi Dawud, and it's an authentic chain of narration narrated to us by Abi Bakra. And Abi Bakra was a Sahabi that was given this nickname. His name is Nufay ibn al-Harith, and the reason why he was given this name is because he was actually at Ta'if. He was a slave at Ta'if, and when there was the siege of Ta'if after the Battle of Hunayn, he escaped from his master using a pulley system to descend down the wall and go to the believers in the Prophet ﷺ. And so he was named Abi Bakra. Bakra is the pulley system. So he's narrated a number of hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. And so he says in this one, قال كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا أتاه أمر يسره أو بشر به خر ساجدا شكرا لله تبارك وتعالى. He says that the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he would get good news that would please him, or glad tidings, he would prostrate in gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the theme of gratitude that we've been talking about for a number of weeks, this hadith really is talking about the act of showing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gratitude through action, and that action is the sajda to shukr. And this sajda is obviously a symbol of gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's been popularized recently by a lot of athletes. You see them when they score goals or they win matches. You see them prostrating. This is the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this hadith, just a few points inshallah ta'ala for regarding gratitude. It really highlights how it's important to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and thank Him when times are easy and wonderful and we get great news. Right? The human being by nature, when they get into difficulty, they start to feel a sense of the need for help and despair, and so they seek support through someone, right? And of course the believer seeks support through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's when there's hard times. But this hadith reminds us when there are easy times, when things come to us and they're pleasing and they're good news, it's also important to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the Prophet ﷺ, what this is showing us is that his expression ﷺ for gratitude and belief in Allah and his faith were not only limited to the formal acts of worship, like our 5 daily prayers or our sunan or fasting. They weren't limited to that. The Prophet ﷺ, when he got good news, there was a spontaneous, sincere feeling in his heart ﷺ, that he wanted to express that gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala right away. And so we don't have to wait for the perfect time to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is how the Prophet ﷺ expressed his happiness, is to go back to Allah and show him that he is grateful for that, that glad tidings and the news. People generally have an automatic response to good news, as we know. Some people scream, some people jump, some people want to tell somebody, some people even cry, right, when they hear good news. The Prophet ﷺ did it through prostration to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So ask yourself, what do I do when I get happy news? How do I react? And the Prophet ﷺ is showing us this is, Islam is a way of life. It's not just through the rituals, the formal rituals, but it's a deep connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in good and in bad throughout the day, not just limited to particular points of time. And inshallah ta'ala, the last point that I'll mention is the point of humility. That the Prophet ﷺ, when he got good news, whether it's because he did something ﷺ and it was a consequence of that or something else, that he was always showing humility to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oftentimes when people get a good result or something that they're seeking or a consequence of something that they worked so hard for, you get that element of I did it, it sneaks into the heart. I did it, I got this because I'm smart, or I'm good, or I'm skilled, or I'm successful, or I'm strong, etc. Right? There's that nafs calls to boasting and showing off. But the Prophet ﷺ is reminding us that when you have good news that come to you, that you lower your most honorable part of your body, which is your head, all the way to the lowest part of the ground, in humility to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to remind yourself, first and foremost, that this is because of the Most High. And so I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to, practice the sunnah more often. And there are differences of opinion on, what you need to, whether you need to do takbir or have wudu for the sunnah, or for prostration of shukr. There is a difference of opinion that you don't need any of those. And wallahu alam, I tend to follow that because again, it's spontaneous and it's an automatic response to whatever you get. And so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be in that state. يروي أبو داود في سننه بسند صحيح عن أبي بكرة رضي الله عنه قال كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا أتاه أمر يسره أو بشر به خر ساجدا شكرا